Thomas Rose, who was appointed by President Donald Trump as the new United States ambassador to Poland in February, was confirmed by the Senate today. A right-wing journalist and radio commentator, he previously served as an advisor to Vice President Mike Pence. It took several months for Rose to receive the support of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, although no Democrats accepted the selection.
The relationship between the United States and Poland is built on shared values, liberty, sovereignty, and the unbreakable bonds of faith, family, and freedom.
The vote in the US Senate covered a broad package of over 100 names for various positions. Rose was supported by 51 senators, with 47 against. It was a long procedure. It is very good news that this process has come to an end. He defended Poland against unfair attacks many years ago. Thomas Rose guarantees an international policy in line with Donald Trump's vision. And he was the US president who invited Polish President Karol Nawrocki on his first foreign visit.
I also endorsed him, so I'm very proud of that. I don't endorse too many people, but I endorsed him, and I was very proud of that, the job he's done.
The Polish-American alliance is crucial, among other things, for strengthening security on NATO's eastern flank. It is crucial for the security of Polish citizens.
Those relations for me, for Poland, for Poles, are very important with the United States of America, and they are based on values: independence, sovereignty, democracy. And I think, Mr. President, that those values are epitomized by our common heroes,
yes.
Kazimierz Pułaski and Tadeusz Kościuszko. So thank you very much. And
the alliance is strong primarily because both presidents have similar worldviews, and they are fighting against the global left. That is why it is very embarrassing for Poland that it does not have an ambassador in the United States. Bogdan Klich, the head of the diplomatic mission, was sent to America after the previous ambassador, Marek Magierowski, was recalled without consulting the then president, Andrzej Duda. Key positions for ambassadors are empty. We have witnessed scandalous discussions, attempts to force a president to make decisions, but the responsibility lies entirely with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the government. Bogdan Klich remains merely the head of the Washington office, who has not been and will not be nominated as an ambassador by either the previous or current Polish presidents, according to announcements. This shows how the Donald Tusk government conducts diplomacy with the United States, a strategic ally. They sent over a man who not only had previously criticized President Trump, but is also one of the key elements of the Russian Western diplomatic reset. As head of the Ministry of Defense, Klich made scandalous decisions that undermined Polish national security. A few days ago, when Bogdan Klich was given a letter by Donald Trump addressed to Polish President Karol Nawrocki, Klich opened it, read it, and leaked it to the press. President Nawrocki learned about the letter in the news. It is an absolute scandal that those who rule today and hold positions in embassies are the first to inform the public about the letter. What is particularly detrimental for Poland is the lack of a diplomat with the rank of ambassador in the United States. There is only a chargé d'affaires, who is lower in rank than an ambassador, a title used when relations between countries are not strong enough to justify a full embassy. It's time for us to have an ambassador in Washington, because, as of today, there is none. Donald Tusk's management has led us to this point. Volodymyr Z, a Ukrainian diver, is detained in Poland at the request of the Germans. Not only at their request, but with their active participation. The Germans participated in the search of the apartment of the Ukrainian suspected of blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. As far as the provisions of the Code of Criminal Procedure and the European Investigation Order are concerned, the provisions state that, of course, the requesting party, that is Germany, may request the participation of its representatives in these activities, but the host, in this case Poland, decides whether or not these services should assist in the activities, as was the case here. The defence also has doubts about the confiscation of equipment belonging to Volodymyr Z. The Germans secured and immediately removed from Poland diving equipment and construction equipment that the Ukrainian used in his paid work. Vladimir Putin is rubbing his hands with glee at the fact that, through the hands of Germany and ultimately Poland, a Ukrainian citizen accused of an act that will probably constitute an act of heroism in Ukraine is now in a Polish detention centre. The opposition is also concerned about the Polish authorities' compliance with other German demands. Among other things, the prosecutor's request to arrest Volodymyr Z. The prosecutor demanded 100 days in custody. The court agreed to 40. According to the regulations, the case should be concluded in 40 days in the first instance, so the court decided that there was no reason to apply pre-trial detention beyond this period. The 100 days requested by the prosecutor's office is the period in which the case should be concluded in 2 instances. Now, Germany is demanding the extradition of the Ukrainian. In Germany, he is to be tried for alleged complicity in blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. He faces 15 years in prison. It is obvious that Poland's extradition to Germany of Ukrainian Vladimir Z, who is alleged to have blown up the pipeline, is contrary to Poland's raison d'etat, because Poland's raison d'etat is to prevent Germany from getting closer to Russia. According to experts, it is in Poland's interest that Vladimir Z not be handed over to Germany. There are serious concerns that Germany will immediately hand him over to the Russian Federation. Unfortunately, more and more facts point to this scenario. Among other things, the attack by Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski on Professor Andrzej Nowak. For what? For the fact that, as one of President Karol Nawrocki's closest associates, he wants to take part in a conference in Berlin entitled The Polish-German House, Bridge or Deception. It takes exceptional short-sightedness to legitimize German revisionists out of bitterness towards the European Union. Verily I say unto you, fear nationalist Germans more than pro-European ones. Professor Andrzej Nowak is an eminent historian and expert on Russia, including Soviet Russia, who was one of the first in Poland to talk about the reset with Russia implemented by Donald Tusk's first and second governments. However, such points of reference for the reset with Russia in 2008, at the beginning of 2008, after the aforementioned conference in Munich, just before Russia's aggression against Georgia, show, I would say, a shocking willingness to submit to Russia, which makes no secret of its aggressive intentions. This is an excerpt from the first episode of the series Reset. In it, Professor Nowak commented on the foreign ministry's submissiveness towards Russia, using the example of a letter sent by Sikorski to Moscow before one of Tusk's meetings with Putin. In the letter, the Polish foreign ministry recalls the times when Tsar Alexander ruled the Kingdom of Poland. The very suggestion of this kind of association testifies to the transmission, in a soft way one might say, of an attitude towards Russia of complete submissiveness, subordination, forgetting, not even independence, but forgetting the basic dignity of a separate state, because the Polish kingdom established in 1815 was, to a large extent, thanks to Tsar Alexander, merely a bridgehead for Russian influence. Perhaps this is the real reason why Sikorski reacted so strongly to Professor Nowak's declaration about his departure for a conference in Berlin. It is a pity that such a strong reaction was not forthcoming after Angela Merkel's words, which damaged Poland's reputation. The former German Chancellor considered our country to be partly responsible for the outbreak of war in Ukraine because we did not agree to talks with the criminal Putin. Some did not help us in this, primarily the Baltic authorities, but also Poland, because they believed that we would not develop a common policy on Russia. My opinion was that we had to work on a common policy. In any case, we did not manage to do so. Then I resigned from my position. Mrs. Merkel is one of the people who are truly to blame for this war in every sense of the word. Her policy towards Russia was simply scandalous, and unfortunately, she had her representatives here. Or perhaps I should be less polite and say she pushed them in Poland. However, neither Merkel nor the representatives of the government in Warsaw mentioned that it was Poland, through the mouths of right-wing politicians, who warned against submissiveness towards Russia for years, and that Putin earned money for the war by selling his raw materials to Germany, also through Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2. From the very beginning, regardless of who was in power in Poland, also in my role as President of the European Council, we explained and strongly opposed the construction of Nord Stream 2 from the outset. That is what Donald Tusk says today, but a year before Russia's aggression against Ukraine, he publicly called the rule of the German Christian Democratic Union of Germany, during which the Russian-German pipelines were built, a blessing, not only for Germany, but also for the whole of Europe. Apparently, however, we are not. According to Vladimir Z's defense attorney, no Ukrainian citizen, under international and Polish law, should be prosecuted for destroying Russian property or assets that directly or indirectly finance a war in Ukraine. But what would Germany say then?
Belgorod, a Russian city right behind the front lines. These are the effects of a retaliatory attack by Ukrainian forces on the city following a massive strike on Lviv and Zaporizhia last weekend. Similar incidents are occurring all over Russia. This is all due to the growing capabilities of Ukrainian forces to strike targets past the front line. Ukrainian manufacturers already have a share in the production of weapons and drones, and this number is growing. Of course, we would prefer it to grow faster. However, comparing 2023 with 2025, we see that the share of drones and ammunition produced in Ukraine has increased significantly. Two kinds of weapons are key. The first, weapons used for strikes on the front line, such as small and maneuverable drones that perform both observation and strike functions, mainly against moving targets. In this regard, Ukraine is engaged in an arms race with Russia on an unprecedented scale. Drones on our side, drones on theirs. Whoever has the stronger drones will win the war. The conflict is ongoing on the ground and in the air. The enemy is putting pressure on us. We are doing our best to repel them. The second kind of weapon, which is equally if not more important in the current situation, is the ability to carry out strategic strikes deep behind Russian front lines. This includes refineries, weapons and ammunition factories, and airfields from which Russian strategic bombers take off. In this regard, intelligence data is crucial, mainly satellite data, which Washington shares with Kyiv with the consent of the White House. Undoubtedly, this creates an opportunity to organize more complex, high-quality operations, allowing us to break through air defenses with fewer resources, without having to fire a large number of weapons that will be intercepted. Kyiv warns the West of an uncontrolled outbreak of Russian sabotage operations. Incidents at European airports and NATO military bases in recent weeks clearly point toward Russian involvement. Intelligence services have evidence of the direct involvement of Russian cells in Europe. The head of intelligence also described in detail how Russia is using tankers from its shadow fleet, not just to finance the war, but also to carry out sabotage and destabilization operations in Europe. Recent cases of drones being launched from tankers are examples of this. We are sharing this information with our partners, and it is important that their response to Russia is real. The real response would be a decision to transfer frozen Russian assets in the West to purchase weapons for the Ukrainian army. Kyiv is counting on this, and more Western leaders admit they are leaning toward such a decision. In recent days, the possible sale of American-made Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine was announced, which could change the rules of the game on the battlefield.
I've sort of made a decision, pretty much, if you consider. I think I want to find out what they're doing with them. Yes. You know, where are they sending them, I guess? I'd have to ask that question. That war should never have started, would have never started.
3, 2, 1, launch.
Tomahawks would be a big problem for the Russians. Not only are they extremely accurate and fast, but they also use advanced guidance systems, which can be a major challenge for Russian anti-missile systems. At the same time, the Kremlin does not have enough forces and resources to secure all critical facilities in the country, as demonstrated by recent attacks on refineries near Moscow and weapons factories in the Ural Mountains, which were hit by Ukrainian-made missiles and drones that are much less technologically advanced than American Tomahawks.
Hundreds of people took part in an evacuation exercise in Vilnius on Tuesday, where approximately 100 residents were moved by train to camp beds at a sporting arena 100 kilometers or 62 miles away as part of Lithuania's preparedness measures against potential regional instability. With Moscow rattling nerves across NATO's eastern flank, governments across the Baltics and in Poland are drawing up plans to evacuate hundreds of thousands of people in case Ukraine's conflict with Russia spills onto their territory.
Capital geographical location is unfortunately very close to border with Thatch countries, one of the Thatch countries, and we have to be prepared for different scenarios.
Lithuanian capital Vilnius, whose 700,000 inhabitants live as close as 20 kilometers or 12 miles to the border of Belarus, a close ally of Russia, falls within the evacuation range. The government intends to help about half of them. Well, apparently, we are talking about the entire city. We understand that if an emergency situation arose that would require the evacuation of Vilnius, it would not be a situation that would arise in one day. Perhaps locally, there would be a need to evacuate some part of the city or a neighborhood or several lines. But apparently, that trust is the one that, based on its experience, is still focused on the fact that the capacities must be oriented towards the entire population of Vilnius, 600,000 inhabitants. Assembly points in Vilnius and elsewhere have been selected. Trains and buses have been assigned for potential evacuation, and supplies such as toilet paper and camp beds have been stockpiled in warehouses.
We have around 10 spaces in Kaunas, 10 churches, which are prepared to accommodate people, usually underground, but not every church have that facility. So in the main area, which is main hall, sanctuary, they could accommodate, especially if there is a need to help. But there is also places where you can hide yourself in case of bombing, or would be, if it is dangerous to stay outside. So limited space, but still available.
Vehicles with evacuees will be directed to designated secondary roads to clear others for the incoming army units. The government has advised the population to keep several days of supplies and a grab bag containing their documents, including paper copies of marriage and birth certificates and documents proving asset ownership.
This is what we're talking about each month, each week, at work, everywhere. That's just to be prepared, and then we'll see. It's the first thing we need. So, and what happens next, we don't know.
Well, I want to get practical advices how to behave in case this terrible day comes. Well, hopefully we won't need that, but just in case. Well, of course, I don't want to leave my home. I want to leave my city. No, I don't want to leave that. But if this becomes threatening to your life, so I will evacuate.
The plans, which follow Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, foresee that half of the people living within 40 kilometers or 25 miles from the borders of Russia and Belarus, about 400,000 people, vacate the zone, while Moscow says it has no plans to attack NATO. Detailed plans include the possibility of actual armed conflict, sabotage of transport links, or a mass influx of migrants from the east, forcing people to evacuate.